You have all walks of life that are here.
Arthur Soriano was a teenager in City Heights in the late 80s, early 90s. He says at the time, the community had a lot of trauma and few resources.
Everyone was fighting for their lives.
These were the years when politicians, including then Senator Joe Biden, promised to be tough on crime to stop quote-unquote super predators. This myth that more and more youth were committing violence without remorse.
And Madam President, we have predators on our streets.
And on the boulevard,
Soriano says City Heights youth feared the police, who he says only came into the neighborhood for things like curfew sweeps and immigration raids. So they ran.
hey, the police is coming, let's run, let's get away.
He was a latchkey kid.
I was raised with a single mother. She worked 2 jobs. Cleaning homes.
He says he had no father and no other family here, and sought out others who would validate him.
I needed a way out, and how I found my way out was becoming part of gangs.
At that time, he says he was more of a gang wannabe. At night, his friends liked to gather in a quick corner parking lot. Most times, he says, they weren't doing anything wrong.
We were just hanging out and talking smack to each other and laughing and giggling.
But it didn't matter. The city of San Diego has a curfew law. Kids under 18 can't be out without an adult between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., with few exceptions.
They're coming with their little vans and wagons and just do raids.
Soriano's first arrest was for curfew.
And while they were doing curfew sweeps, they got me, they grabbed me.
They discovered he had a stolen bike, too.
At that point is when I began to get wrapped up in the system.
He went to juvenile hall just for a few days before being put on probation. But he says it was the start of a cycle.
For most kids, our way of solving it was just running until we would get caught.
The interactions fed into his identity as a gang member. He would eventually go to prison for 23 years. He's been out for the last 11, and now works with youth caught in the same system.
Hope, right? And I'm a beacon of that now.
San Diego police stopped punishing curfew violations with juvenile hall or diversion programs in mid-2019, but they still enforce it. There were 141 curfew arrests last year. They detain the children and call their parents, return them home, or to the police station for pickup. An SDPD spokesperson says they enforce curfew to keep children safe and make it less likely that they'll commit crime. But research is almost unanimous. It's not effective. That's according to a senior researcher for the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice, Mike Males.
Curfews function as devices to waste police time, taking law-abiding youth off the street and creating antagonistic relationships between police and youth, and really not accomplishing anything.
The research doesn't seem to shape San Diego policy. At one point, the city accounted for 40% of all curfew arrests in California. Black and Latino youth make up more than 3/4 of the arrests in San Diego. Males says racial discrimination is the point.
A lot of this is just frankly racial in intent. It's to get Black and Latino youth off the streets, out of the public where they're frightening mostly white patrons of gentrifying areas or suburbs.
He says teens actually have a lower than average crime rate, and it's been going down in recent decades.
We found that when police apprehend youth for curfews, 99+% of the time, the youth that they apprehend was not doing anything wrong.
Research shows youth being in public during curfew hours actually helps reduce crime. Less empty streets, more witnesses. Soriano suggests an alternative to curfew, youth drop-in centers that could be open late night year-round. Soriano helped run extended youth programs during the summer, and he was surprised by the demand.
And we were like, man, these kids, they're not gonna stay with us for 5-6 hours, right? Like, they're gonna wanna go back home and get into what, kids get into. And no, like clockwork, from 12 to 6.
Youth drop-in centers were voted down in this year's city budget. City council members will re-examine the budget next spring. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.